You need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here. Yeah, looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. We need more dogs.
All right, and now we're going to jump into the Carolina Panthers, break down their entire roster with our very, very good friend Jared Feinberg. Tell the people where they can find you, Jared, and how you got into being a Carolina fan and all of that.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys letting me on here tonight, chat with you guys about Panthers football. So you guys can find me on X, on Blue Sky, and Threads at JRod NFL Draft. I kind of started my Panthers fandom around when Cam Newton was drafted. I followed it. I basically fell in love with the game because of Cam, and I basically followed him to Carolina. And once I did, just watching him watch and seeing the fan base, seeing the excitement of the fans really gravitated to me. And that's when I not only fell in love with the Panthers, but fell in love with football, realizing, hey, this is what I want to do for a living. This is what I definitely want to be doing. I didn't realize the writing stuff was what I wanted to do until probably high school. But that's around when I truly became a true fan of this team. It's been a unique experience, and lately I've kind of ventured off into different teams, such as doing work for on SI with Jacksonville Jaguars, Kansas City Chiefs, Los Angeles Rams, on top of Panthers wire work with Anthony Ruiz over there at USA Today SMGs. So yeah, it's the last couple of months were busy, but now we're in a dead period. We're kind of slowing down on some content, but we're still pushing through. Excited to talk about some Panthers football tonight. Let's get into this thing, man.
Yeah, that's always the I feel like the NFL season ends and it's like part of you as a content creator feels like you can take a breath. Then it's like we're free agency. Like that's almost the busier time in some ways.
Mhm.
And then after the draft, you're like, I can breathe. Okay, this is like we're here. We made it. But Jared, before we get too much into roster breakdown or anything like that, what are you excited about what the Panthers added this offseason?
I'm excited about the fact they made a true effort to essentially rebuild their defense, adding talents in the trenches where they desperately needed it. They lacked the depth and the talent up front last season. Lost Derrick Brown week 1 to a torn meniscus. I don't know if that run defense is a little bit better. Even with Derrick Brown, it was a bad defense last year. Gave up the most points, most total points in NFL history. It was not a good group. But I look at this team now on paper, it is significantly better than what it was last year, which is a great sign that this defense will at least be average. One of my favorite signings probably of the Panthers free agency class, and even with the draft overall, is Bobby Brown III. The Panthers have been needing a nose tackle for, gosh, probably the last 2-3 years. And Brown comes in from Los Angeles, from that defense, and looks to be a potential core piece to that defensive front. And the Panthers have been needing a true two-gap nose tackle for a while. Brown can do that very well. He doesn't have elite production, but neither does his teammate Derrick Brown. So what Brown the third has shown is someone that can just get after in the run game, can get you stops, can fill gaps like no one's business. This is a good football player, and I think he's got a chance to be a very productive player in Carolina. So Brown, definitely one of my favorite additions. I'll even say Nick Scorton, Princely. I still can't pronounce his last name, but Princely. Those two players,
I think it
yeah,
is.
those two players were great picks for Carolina in day two. I was shocked they actually went or they doubled down on edge rusher in day two. I was expecting more just kind of spread out. But when you have talents that you feel are high on your board and you feel convicted with those players, you go and get them. And I'm glad Carolina really addressed the edge rusher room there overall. It's young. They did release Jadeveon Clowney a couple weeks ago. There's some fans that are like, we're not sure about that. Are we really going to have to trust DJ Wanham and Patrick Jones to be the starting edge rushers to start the year? And the thing is, I think Wanham's a solid player, solid pass rusher overall. I think Pat Jones is a good run defender. He's also shown to be a pretty adequate pass rusher himself. So I think the pass rush this year is better than what it was last year. Now, will this culminate into an elite defense in year 2 or year 3 under Ejiro Evero? I don't know. I doubt it. I think if you at least get to average from that defense, it is 100% better than what it was a year ago. And that will help Carolina win football games. I think over time, this defense can develop into an elite one, but it will take some time. This isn't going to be an easy fix. What they did this offseason was a really solid fix, a good step in the right direction, but they need to keep pressing forward, especially in 2026.
Who are 1 or 2 players that you would say, I told you this defense exceeded expectations. They were above average in the league. Who are the 1 or 2 players that created that ability for them to exceed expectations?
I think it starts with your 2 cornerstone pieces, Jaycee Horn and Derrick Brown. Those are your 2 true defensive guys at cornerback, at defensive line. Brown is a terrific player. I think we forget, even though he technically really hasn't played in almost 2 years, or at least a full season in 2 years, this is still a very good defensive tackle and someone I think could produce at a high level as a pass rusher in this defense. Jaycee Horn got paid this offseason. Great time that he got his contract because it looks cheap compared to what it was when he first got it. Horn, as long as he stays healthy for most of the season, I said last year, if he played, or at the beginning of last year, if he plays 14 games this year, he's going to be a Pro Bowler. He's going to earn himself a big contract. Look what happened. Got the contract, got the Pro Bowl. Next step, another healthy season, at least 14 games. Keep that momentum going. Keep that healthiness, consistency going. If you can continue to play at a high level, that's going to help Carolina a lot. I think the additions that Carolina even made this offseason, especially in the defensive front, and they continue to add at free safety, say Justin Blackman at free safety, that would be huge for Carolina's efforts to become more of a man defense, allow themselves to be a lot more diverse. They played a lot of cover 3 last year, and they couldn't play much of anything else because of the lack of talent they had defensively. Now, with some of that coaching, of course, I think coaching does bear some responsibility there. So this is a big year for Evero, one way or another. I think he's gone one way or another after this year. Either he's going to be a head coach somewhere, he's going to be a defensive coordinator elsewhere, or he's fired before the end of the season. Just depends on how this defense performs and how people and even the team itself, or even Dave Canales, perceive Evero as a defensive coordinator. But Jaycee Horn, Derrick Brown, those are going to be the 2 guys that really judge how this defense is going to perform in 2025. You're on mute.
I am on mute. Thank you. Our number here on this graphic for Derrick Brown, 64th percentile. Like, that doesn't seem that great. But, man, when I watch Derrick Brown's tape, I go, this dude is a game wrecker. I think he is an absolute monster. And, like, I hope he can stay healthy, like you said, because when he's healthy, I think he's one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. And it's clear as day in his tape. He's just manhandling people. And to your point about Evero, they ran a lot of cover 3 last year, and that feels like a sin for a defense coordinator with the acumen of Ejiro Evero, because he he just wants to do so much diverse stuff and versatile stuff from what I've seen. Can you talk a little bit about like what you expect to see from him if they do get some of that health or consistency on the back end to be able to do more of what he likes to do?
Yeah, so that was a talking point earlier in the offseason after it was announced that Evra would return this season. Is that all right? What does this defense need to be where everyone wants it to be, where he can be the defensive coordinator that we witnessed in Denver a couple years ago? The guy that can disguise defenses like nobody else, that can put your players in the right positions to succeed like nobody else. And I think it comes down to having that true free range safety on the back end. I think they need someone like Justin Blackmon. And it seemed like they indicated during the draft and even afterwards that they aren't done at the safety position. They are still going to look to add at safety, but there's no rush to do so. There's still a couple months until training camp. So I would anticipate something. I mean, it could happen anytime. But if Justin Blackmon is high on their radar, which I would safely assume that's a true possibility, he will likely be a Carolina Panther within the next couple months. It's going to allow you to run more quarters, run more man, more diverse coverages, rotate your safeties out of that cover three, that single high alignment. So you're going to allow your safeties to come down and play the run. It'll be similar to what Steve Spagnuolo does with his safeties. He'll rotate them early. He'll rotate them as the snap is happening, and he'll rotate them a bunch even pre-snap, especially when offenses are readjusting a play, calling an audible. Spag will just move these safeties all over the place. And Vic Fangio does the same thing. And of course, Jero Evero being a more so of an assistant to Vic Fangio. So this is Fangio's system, but in Evero's little touch, let's just say. So I'm excited to see what Evero can do this year. I'm much higher on him in terms of, hey, this is what he can become. Now, if it's first 4 games, this defense is still giving up 30 points a game, then it's likely Evero, and you have to toss him, which means Jonathan Cooley, their secondary coach, will likely be the defensive coordinator in waiting. And it seems like that's the way they've been leaning it this offseason. That's what it's going to take for Evero to be the quality defensive coordinator that everyone knows him to be. And I think Panther fans will see that this season. I think they'll see an improved secondary, especially if they add another safety like Blackmon or another true free safety.
And do you mean Justin Simmons rather than Blackmon? Or am
the
I
reason I listen? Well, I think Simmons is still a good player. I just don't know if he fits what Carolina wants in terms of the ceiling they want to have for their secondary. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the signings the Panthers have made this offseason and last offseason were around players that were under 30. Blackmon's 27. He's going to be, I think, 28 during the season. So he's a younger player, gives Carolina more ceiling than Simmons, who is likely there for a season, is looking for possibly another contender to play with. In a perfect world, I would love Simmons. I think Simmons would be a great fit, but if Carolina was a Super Bowl contender, I think that's the difference here. I think Blackmon would be willing to play anywhere.
Is it Julian Blackmon from
Blackmon.
Indy? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I think that's where my confusion came in. Okay.
Yep.
I was thinking Justin Blackmon. I was like the Jaguars wide receiver legend of yesteryear. Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. And I honestly forgot that Evero came from that Fangio branch. And that makes a lot of sense for the Trevon Moehrig, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, signing to me, because back when Moehrig was drafted, the Bears needed a safety, and they were just coming off. Vic Fangio had just become the Broncos head coach, and a guy who I talked with, who's a defensive backs coach, he was like, Bears got to get Trevon Moehrig. He's great at these late rotations in the backfield, and that going to fit that Fangio style defense extremely well. And I'm just sitting here thinking that's something that probably didn't get utilized enough with the Raiders when he was there, and something that he can probably bring more to the Panthers secondary than we've seen him do in the NFL.
And one thing I want to say is that Moehrig can play in coverage pretty well. Don't let the PFF stats fool you on that. Don't let the grade fool you. I went back and watched some of Moehrig's tape over the last few years, and I evaluated him coming out of college, out of TCU. He was a great coverage defender, like a great free safety too. Like he can play on the back end. He can roam the post, deep third consistently if you allow him to. I think with the Raiders' lack of true adequate talent on that defense the last couple of years, he had to play more towards the box to help with the run. He's a great tackler. I think he's developed terrifically as a tackler. Maybe that could have hindered some of his coverage ability in the past, but I think he's still a very above average coverage safety overall. I was a big fan of the signing. I know a lot of people like the signing as well. Panther fans were really hoping those first couple days that the Panthers could have signed both Moehrig and Javon Holland. That would have been a home run at safety. That would have given you some nightmares, some just incredibly tough matchups to deal with this upcoming season. But of course, he went to the Giants. We'll see how the Giants do on that front. But I think the Panthers made a great signing with Moehrig. It will be interesting to see what they do at safety over the next couple months. If they bring in Blackman, if they try out Lathan Ransom, their 4th-round draft pick, or Damani Richardson at free safety. I'm not the biggest fan of that idea, but I get it. But again, at the same time, you have to understand this is still somewhat of a rebuilding team, even though they're getting closer to not really being that team anymore. They just need to add a few more pieces, and everywhere else, I think they're pretty solid for the moment.
On the safety end, like especially if they go and add a Blackman, like you said, like I feel like that room starts to feel pretty good. But when I'm looking at the defense, I'm saying like we talked about the defensive line and some of the like. I think that there is some really nice stuff there as far as what they've built with getting Scorton, getting Princely in there. Cam Jackson was a guy who I probably liked more than I should. He just fit the archetype of defensive tackles that I like because I think they have a high floor in the league. But when I look at like Christian Roseboom and Josie Jewell, I'm like, okay, that's a solid linebacker room. Josie Jewell, that goes back to the Jura Evero and Denver stuff. Like there's some fit there that makes sense. And Roseboom is a guy who, 2 years ago, I was sitting here, I thought the LA Rams were going to have the number 1 pick, and then they proved me terribly wrong. I remember sitting here going, who the hell is Christian Roseboom? He's starting for them. And that's like 2 years later, the guy's still starting in the league, and he's been a pretty solid football player out there. Mm-hmm. But when I look at, I know very little about Mike Jackson besides him having a good number here. And Shaw Smith-Wade, I know there was some stuff to like about him coming out of college, but I don't know a lot about him, like what his outlook is at this point in his career. How do you feel about the cornerback room?
Cornerback room, it's okay. Horn, of course, stands out. Mike Jackson was solid last year. I was impressed with how well he played, how well he did coming in. I think he was one of the strengths of that defense last year. He was a great tackler coming downhill. I thought he had some good moments in coverage. There were also some times where he was like, it wasn't some not so ideal situations. But I think Jackson can be a solid man corner for this team. He's not a terrific player per se for this defense, but at the same time, he's one of the best players they got on the back end, and they'll continue to rely on him. He's just generally consistent. That's why I'll say he's just overall consistent with his play, and like the flaws are obvious, the strengths are obvious. He's just one of those players that he's going to struggle in some areas, but he's going to do great in others, and that's okay.
At CB2, that's kind of the standard, right? Like
exactly,
that makes sense.
Exactly. But I will say this, that Panther fans have had a tendency of wanting the best of the best players. I think every fan base wants that, but Panther fans, especially over the last couple years, with Bryce Young having the rookie contract, like, hey, we got to bring in all the best players we can get. Where at the same time, I'm like, you got to let this team grow and develop. You got to let this team build. This team is nowhere close to going out and signing a T. Higgins or going out and trading for Jalen Ramsey or going out and trying to drop a high ransom for Garrett Wilson when there were rumors he was on the trade market with the whole Rodgers debacle and whatever. So again, Mike Jackson, solid CB2. I have very few complaints with that. Smith Wade, I thought he played very well at times last year. I thought he had some moments that came up big, especially in the Tampa Bay game. I think that was his first start in the NFL. He had a key interception, put Carolina in scoring range. I think they went on to score on that subsequent drive, and it led to a great overtime game in general. But Smith Wade, he's a smaller corner. I don't know if he's going to consistently hold up as the nickel. And I think next offseason, you could see Carolina really going after a true starting nickel if Smith Wade does not turn out for the better in 2025. But for a corner that's 5'9", 5'10", 180 plus, he plays much bigger than his size suggests. I mean, he's a true bulldog. And that excites me at nickel for them. And if you get quality play from Smith Wade this season, you're going to have a pretty solid secondary in 2025.
I feel like you need those guys on your roster, right? Guys who like they don't quite fit all the check boxes that you want to check off, but like if they bring that bulldog mentality, that feisty gamer mentality, they're guys who tend to overperform maybe where you see them being. Now, I mean, I think we've covered the defense pretty well here, so I think we want to get into the offense a little bit here, and I think there's only one place we can start that, and that's
quarterback.
Bryce Young. How do we feel about Bryce Young's second year in the NFL against his rookie year, and where are our expectations going forward?
So last year was just a weird year. Of course, we see Bryce getting benched after 2 games. He just did not look like the quarterback everyone was anticipating coming out of Alabama in the first 2 weeks of the season. Hell, even
very talented Alabama team.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that I wanted to see from Bryce in year 2 was just progression. I want to see progression. I want to see if he can show he can be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. And then Andy Reid has the car accident. And then Bryce Young comes in to start against Denver. He had some okay moments, had some bad moments too. But then he kept progressing with each game. And I would say the Kansas City game is really when he took off.
Yeah.
Gave the AFC champs a run for their money. The next week almost leads another game-winning drive against the Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles.
Trash.
It was at that point where I was like, okay, Bryce, I think Bryce is here. I think he's got it.
I think
I got to see how he does the rest of the season. You see the progression with each game, and then the Atlanta game happened. 5-touchdown performance against the Atlanta Falcons in the season finale. It was at that moment where I was like, okay, I think he's the franchise quarterback for Carolina moving forward. I don't think there are any questions about it. I think the weapons around him got better with the drafting of Tatario McMillan. You added Rico Dowdle as RB2. Drafted Trevor Etienne. You drafted Mitchell Evans. Get Jadavian Sanders back. Get Adam Thielen back. A true security blanket for this offense. Even though there are some Panther fans that are like, we want someone younger, faster.
Adam Thielen's solid as a third option.
Yes, absolutely. And he's going to be a reliable target in this offense. Always open. Look, is he slow?
He's like Walmart in 2007, baby.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
And if you want one guy teaching like Tet and Legette, it's probably Adam Thielen. Like the guy, clearly, it seems like is willing to be a mentor to guys and has all the knowledge in the world of how to
He acts
win
like he
as
wants to
a
go into
former
coaching.
UDFA who's now been in the league for forever. Like he knows
Made
a
a
thing.
ton of money. Got more money than God.
yeah, and I also think Thielen's going to be a great mentor for Jalen Coker. That's another name that
Yeah.
we really can't forget about. But what I saw from Bryce Young, final 10 games of the year, just lighting it up. Not necessarily lighting it up per se, but ending the year, the game that he had, I think he continues to carry that momentum. I think he's going to be a great quarterback for Carolina.
I do have a question for you.
But
As a Panthers fan, how heartbroken are you to see Jonathan Mingo go away for a 4th-round pick? I know that had to have broken your
I'm so
heart.
heartbroken. I'm
Like,
just
I
absolutely devastated.
I know he was next up for Carolina in that offense, and just seeing him go for just a 4th-round pick too, it's like, dude should have been a first.
It was soul crushing. It was absolutely
Yeah.
soul crushing. Yeah.
Yeah, I just
You know,
like getting that
I mean,
confirmation so
hey.
I can snap it and send it to my group text.
Yeah, look, I mean, all I'll say is I wish Jonathan Mingo the best of luck. That's all I'll
Oh
say.
yeah, best of luck.
Yeah.
Go out there. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
you're a wide receiver 6 on that Cowboys roster. I mean, you'll
Good
kill
luck,
it.
fam. Good luck. Good
Now,
luck.
speaking a little bit about tragic though, last year you guys drafted a running back in the 2nd round.
Jonathan Brooks,
Oh,
very skilled individual. ACL Tyree.
Yeah, am I right? Did he just have another ACL injury occur?
At the end of the season, they tried. I thought he was going to be out all. You can go, but I thought he was going to be out all season. Then there it goes.
yeah, and Brooks actually played a couple games. He played against the Chiefs.
About 3.5 games, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he did. And the flashes he showed in those games, I was like,
Dog.
this could be a fun running back duo with Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks. And then against Philly, first few snaps into the game, the knee goes out again.
It's always Philly that rips the joy out of the NFL.
Yeah.
Let's just get rid of the whole franchise.
Might as well. I mean,
what are we doing here?
Like, bad luck here with with Brooks.
Yeah.
I feel for the kid. He's so talented. I want him to succeed, and I think he can still be the same player we saw before the injury at Texas, and even the flashes he showed in those few games for Carolina. But you got to wonder, after 2 torn ACLs, how is he going to be able to challenge himself? Not necessarily challenge himself. More so, what's his mentality like?
It's also a crowded room now. All of a sudden, you bring in Rico Dowdle, you bring in Trevor Etienne. Then all of a sudden, it's not he's the clear cut 1-2 option. Now it's like, oh, okay, you're competing for a spot to make the roster.
And Brooks was put on the PUP list.
Yep. So he's out for the season.
Yep. So, and the thing with Rico Dowdle is interesting because I don't anticipate him to be here in Carolina past 2025. I think he's in Carolina for 1 year.
I'm proud of him for making a roster.
Yeah, exactly. And
full disclosure, Jay was once a Cowboys fan and has recently
never in my life was I a Cowboys fan.
Okay, now we need an investigation here. Like, oh boy.
You can't hire Brian Schottenheimer if you're the Dallas Cowboys.
Schottenheimer and Matt Eberflus is a tough combination to get behind.
I'm
Investigation closed. Investigation closed.
I'm 34 years old and I've never seen a conference championship.
That's just oof.
Josh Allen's the GOAT. No bandwagon here. I've been a Buffalo fan for life. I live in West Texas, and I see people all the time. They're like, "Oh, you're a Buffalo Bills fan? You from Buffalo?" And I'm like, "Yep." Born and raised, baby.
Oh my god. Look, I have a friend that I've had the pleasure of calling a friend over the last several years. he was a Cowboys fan, and then Schottenheimer got hired, and then it was just like that. It was over. So I'm like,
I know about 7 people that gave up their season tickets that they waited 3 to 4 years of being on a list for. I'm terrified as a Bills fan of like seeing the Cowboys in the Super Bowl because like I'm committed to the bit. I can't turn around, and I'm like this is it. Like the second I give up on them, like the Schottenheimer's somehow going to do it. Yeah.
Jay, listen, I respect the bit. I respect the bit. I mean, it's a good bit. It really is. Like, keep going with it, man.
Yeah, like it's so easy to fade the Cowboys. Like, if I've been fading the Cowboys my whole life, I'd be so much happier. I've fully committed to this bit. Like, my house is all Bills. 8 months ago, it was all Cowboys. Like, all of my wife's football gear is Bills now. I have a 4-year-old son. He's all Billsed out. Like,
you're gonna make my friend Joe Marino very happy, my friend. Very happy.
On that note, has there been much of that type of sentiment with the Panthers since David Tepper took over?
Yeah, that trade was crazy. I mean,
to touch on maybe a little bit more of like a heart-throbbing issue of like the question of Tepper's ownership and then like the following years after, which it seems like they're sitting in a good spot now. But
I think it's helped over the last couple of years that, or even I would include last year and this year, is that Tepper's been in the background. We haven't heard a peep. I've spoken with beat reporters that are like, we barely hear about Tepper anymore.
That's good.
I think that's a great sign that it's the football people doing the football stuff and not the Tepper meddling in the affairs like he did earlier. The whole thing with Tepper, when he
never want to be considered the worst owner in sports.
Yeah, I can agree with that. When Tepper was first brought on as the owner, when he first bought the team, I was like, okay, I think I might like this. But then he screwed up the Matt Rule hire. He didn't just go full bore with a clean slate, hire a new regime. He kept Marty Hurney after he hired Matt Rule. Then he fired Hurney, brought in Fitter, fired Rule, brought in Reich, fired Reich, and then Fitter.
Were they taking notes from the Bears GM or from the Bears ownership?
I guess so.
Bears love
they love doing that.
Alternating head coach and GM and never get them on the same page.
And I think Tepper really, I think he realized, okay, I got to go clean slate here. I got to do it. Went with Dave Canellis, hired from within with Dan Morgan. I think Dan Morgan showing he is not the GM. He's not the same GM as Scott Fitter. No way. I think this offseason showed the opposite of what Scott Fitter was. The contracts are better. They brought in Brent Tillis from Kansas City. That was a terrific hire. Like the way the contracts are structured for a lot of these free agent signings have been great. I think the same way can go for some of the contract extensions they've been giving out. Same with Derrick Brown and Jaycee Horn over the last couple of years. So it's been, I wouldn't say there's been the same animosity that Dallas Cowboys fans have had over the last few years or even this offseason. But I will say that fans were just mostly annoyed and ticked off that Tepper kept meddling in affairs. I don't think there was really like a changing of the team. Now, if the Panthers just completely bottom out this year, I think you're going to see a lot of animosity, a lot of teams like, you know what, forget about it. This franchise is not going to be successful anymore. You might as well move the team, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, all the feelings would be very valid, but it's hard for me to imagine this Panthers team having 4 wins this year, much less 5. I think this is at least an 8 to 9 win team. I think they get to 8 or 9 wins this year. They have the talent. Yeah, and if they can, I think the goal this year for Carolina should be you're competing for a playoff spot in the final few weeks of the year.
See, if I'm a Carolina fan, I'm looking at this roster and I'm looking at Bryce Young making that jump after how we finished last season. I'm looking at year 2, Xavier Legette. I'm looking at what Adam Thielen did last year. What he catch, like 70, 80 balls? I don't know exactly, somewhere around there. And then Tedero McMillan, who was really split amongst a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people thought he was wide receiver 1. Some people, I think Daniel Jeremiah said he wouldn't even draft him until day 3. A lot of split opinions there. I'm a Big 12 guy. Q is a Big 12 guy. I thought Tedero McMillan was fine. Didn't love him, but I like the way he fits in this offense. But you're looking at this offense, and you look at the NFC South in general. There's a window of opportunity there. So it's like you look at the 6.5 win total as a betting man, which I am, which Q is. And as a betting man, 6.5, you're like, might as well take the division for 390, because if you're taking the over on 6.5, you're betting, you're hoping that you're getting to 8 or 9 wins, because like you don't want to be sitting there week 17, week 18, week 19, being like, let's get that 7th win. So if you think you can if you think you can hit the over on the win total here, like, I think they can win the division if you think they can hit the over.
Because the over's unjuiced. It's minus 140. Like, you know,
and Carolina hit the over last year on their win total.
Yeah.
I think they can absolutely do it again, but I think they're going to mash the win total. They're going to blow it out of the ballpark.
So
at least for me personally.
I mean, if we're going by that logic, we're talking about winning the division, because if we get to there, I mean, we're looking at the Bucks and we're looking at maybe the Falcons, but
yeah. And Q and I were talking before the show that I feel like Tampa Bay has always been 12, 13 win team, but their coach kind of keeps them back from doing so. And I think Canellis, I think Cohen has bailed them out a couple times or several times over the last
Baker
2
Mayfield.
years. Yeah. And that I'm so happy for Baker to see him succeeding.
I love Baker Mayfield.
Me too. And seeing Baker succeed in Tampa Bay has been great, but he's been a terror for Carolina or the last at least 3 of the last 4 games.
Imagine if Carolina could have ever signed a guy like that.
Man, look, that's the one memory from that season. I'm just like, I'd like to move on. It was never a fit. It really wasn't.
I mean,
one of our favorite sayings on this show in season and the off season, whenever we're talking about Baker in any way, is never doubt a Baker's horn. And Baker probably keeps that. He has that chip on his shoulder that he keeps about Carolina. I'm sure that, like you said, he's been a bit of a terror for you guys. I don't think that's a coincidence. Whether he was wronged or not, he feels it, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, he played on Carolina?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Traded July. That's July 2022. It ended November that year or December. I think it was around Thanksgiving. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. So then he went to the Rams.
2022 was a wild year because that year Carolina was within a game of getting into the postseason.
Oh yeah. If they would have grabbed a guy like Sam Darnold, they probably could have closed the deal.
You're just tugging at the heartstrings, man. I respect that.
Wait, what happened?
Well, if it feels any better, I still don't love Sam Darnold. Going forward, I think Baker's the real deal, but Sam Darnold, I still have a lot of questions.
I'm very curious how Sam Darnold's going to turn out next year.
Yeah, I am curious about how you feel about this rookie offensive class with McMillan, Etienne, and Horn out of Colorado.
I love Mitchell Evans.
Mitchell Evans, yeah. Horn out of Colorado. This dude's got real.
He's one of my favorite picks from the draft. He's one of my favorite picks.
Game-changing speed. Jimmy Horn. If you watch Colorado, I mean, he didn't do everything right when you look at a receiver, but he changed games with his speed.
I wrote a film review for Panthers Wire last week about Horn. He's the missing element the Panthers have been wanting on that offense for the last few years. I don't anticipate Jimmy Horn to be like an immediate contributor from the go. I think he does have room for growth, but I think he's going to make an impact as a punt returner, as a kick returner. You're going to see him on the field as more of a motion man, more as like, hey, we got speed on the field, but we're not really going to target him because we got McMillan, we got Thielen, we got Legette, who I think, again, it's going to be a good player for this team. I'm still a believer in Legette. I think he's going to be a very quality player for Carolina as a true receiver, too. I think McMillan's going to be their number one receiver going forward without question. I think he's
got the body for it.
When I did my film, I'm getting through my film review with McMillan, and I'll have something out in the coming weeks. But going back and watching McMillan for like the third time since my first evaluation of him in January, I was like, man, I was really low on his route running ability because I think he's a better route runner than given credit for. And look, I was low on his route running ability just because there wasn't enough consistency there for me. But he ran routes differently than other receivers because of his size. And the light bulb came in my head. I was like, oh, yeah, receivers can win in all sorts of different ways. I think McMillan has the chance to, I think if he becomes more of an urgent player, and if he continues to hone in on his craft as a route runner, he's going to be a really good football player for Carolina for years to come. But
I think so. I think he's got that potential. He's got to put in the work, though.
Yeah. Horn and McMillan could be the future in Carolina, along with Legette and Coker. Talk about a young wide receiver room with potential.
If I'm Carolina,
that's like Green Bay. It's similar to Green Bay.
If I'm Carolina, I'm sitting there looking, and you have a young, ripe, fresh, ready to go Adam Thielen. I just built the whole franchise around him.
Yeah. And look, I'll say this about Thielen.
Adam Thielen's going to go out there and catch another 75 balls next year for like 840 yards and 6 touchdowns and then just retire. We'll never hear from him again.
Exactly.
And you're like, what? Like he was on the verge of being an all-pro or something, and you're like, no, I'll never hear from that guy again.
Nope. I mean, and look, I think this is Thielen's last year in the NFL. I think
so too.
I think he'll be overtaken by a rookie, maybe Jalen Coker, maybe Jimmy Horn. One of those young receivers will stand out, and Thielen will slowly start being rotated out of the significant.
Bryce Young loves him, though. He could go out. I mean, he could be.
And I think that's a key thing too. But if Carolina looks at Hunter Renfrow,
I saw that. Yeah, I'll get him.
And
you just say that because they're white.
Oh my God, we're getting out of hand here.
Yeah, I'm just no, they're similar players. Yeah. Renfrow could go out there and catch you 100 balls, though.
He really could.
He really could.
Look, I get some of the hesitation around Renfrow. Will he make the roster? That still remains to be seen. Is he still the same player he was
just last year off
his whole health issue that he recently revealed? I have no idea.
John Gruden seems to think he's ready to go.
A more quality player than Thielen is, and he's also younger. He's only a few years younger, but he's still younger. And Carolina loves players with ceilings. Renfrow still has a ceiling as a quality playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He could replace Thielen in the slot, and you'll allow Thielen to maybe transition to another franchise that needs a quality pass catcher security blanket on a team that needs that's either a Super Bowl contender or a playoff contender. I could see it happening, but there's still a lot to be had this summer.
If I'm Carolina, I don't want Adam Thielen walking out of the building.
That's fair. Yeah,
I'm sitting there like, this dude's on the verge of retirement. Look what he's worked with. Like, he's kind of said he wants to go into coaching, like I just try to transition on the staff. Like I ain't trying to send him nowhere else. Like I want him to be maybe a wide receivers coach, a draft guy for me going forward. Like take his knowledge, take his experience, take all of that and build with it. Like I'm not letting Adam Thielen walk out the building right now. At what is he, 36 years old?
To build that culture that he's already kind of implemented.
Yeah. Like, no, ain't no way that dude's walking through the door. Like he is staying right by my side.
Yeah. But again, you and Q was talking about earlier, you can talk yourself into really any team. And or
South?
This was pre-show. And
I'm not talking myself into the Saints.
No.
The other three,
you stare at any roster long enough, you can talk yourself into it.
Yeah, you really could talk yourself into any team. You could talk yourself into trying to think of another bad team out there. Titans. You could talk yourself into the Titans somehow.
Titans got some dog. Cam Ward's a dog.
I'm not going there. I'm not going there. I can't do it. I can't.
Incarnate word legend, dude.
I can't do it. I love Cam Ward. I can't talk myself into the Titans right now.
No, but that South is
the South is wide open. I think that, outside the Saints, I think it's wide open between Carolina, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay. Those are your three teams competing for or basically vying for the division title.
Yeah, Atlanta is a wild card. Atlanta can go 4-13 or like 15-2.
They really could, and I think big key of that is Penix. Big time.
Yeah, big old Penix believer.
There are two more things on this offense that I want to touch on before we wrap this up.
Offensive line.
And, I'm saving the best for last. So I want to talk a little Chuba Hubbard. I want to talk about what makes Chuba Hubbard different than a lot of running backs in the league. And
he's from the Big 12.
It can be extremely impressive. So, Jared, what are your thoughts on Hubbard?
Hubbard has been one of the most hardworking players I've come to watch as a Panthers fan, but also as just a general football watcher. Hubbard he went from a raw player out of Oklahoma State that had bad contact balance, that didn't have great vision, that was an okay receiver in the passing game, to being great at all of those, which just shows you his dedication to the craft, his work ethic, and to developing into one of the better running backs in the league. I think the thing with Hubbard is that he never goes down without a fight. He will always fall forward. He's not like a massive running back. He's not this Derrick Henry sized running back. He's got a somewhat smaller stature for a running back, I would say, from just my viewings, but Hubbard can run the football well. He's got good vision. His eyes and feet have become interlinked with each other, essentially, where wherever his eyes are going, his feet are going, and that allows for good footwork, good maneuvering at the first and second level. And then also he has enough burst to win on the third level and beyond. He can run away from defenses if you allow him to. And he showed that plenty of at Oklahoma State coming out. So Hubbard has developed into one of the best running backs in the league, which is great to see. Contract extension very worthy of. It wasn't a Christian McCaffrey type of contract. It was a contract that I'd probably give any of the top running backs in the league right now. Like it wasn't too bad at all. I would say it's probably one of the better contracts you should be giving running backs these days, considering their positional value. Unless you're Saquon Barkley.
What are Panthers' thoughts on a Christian McCaffrey contract in 2025?
I would say that Carolina is just they're not going to pay that type of money for it.
I think Carolina made the right move in that deal, and
I agree.
We're 3 years removed, and San Francisco still doesn't have a title, and they're paying Brock Purdy $250 million. So
Their
Who really
process
won that trade?
interesting. Yeah. And they're extending players, and I feel like they're just putting themselves deeper into a cap hole. It wasn't looking great, or I don't think it's still looking great, but we'll see. But I think Hubbard, what he has done over the last few years to develop into a terrific runner, I still think his best football is ahead of him, which is awesome. And if you can get a healthy Jonathan Brooks back there, you can continue to extend the lifespan of Hubbard's career, keep him fresh, keep Brooks fresh, keep ETN fresh. Trevor Etienne will have an impact on this offense at some point this season, probably in the passing game, probably in the rotation. But Hubbard's the guy. He's the workhorse. It's going to be hard to get him off the field. Carolina really tried to get him off the field as much as possible, try to get some other guys on the field as well. But Hubbard's just that good at this point of his career. And I think
that good off.
Yeah. And I think you saw, like when Brooks was playing in those few games, you saw they wanted to get Brooks in a good amount. They wanted to have a pretty nice shareable snap count overall. And I don't think I think they're going to try that with Dowdle and ETN to kind of make up for Brooks's absence.
Yeah.
But when you talk about Hubbard, he's the engine of the offense. I think if he goes down, Dowdle can probably do a solid job. But again, Hubbard's the engine. He goes down, you got some questions to answer. How does this offense function without Chuba Hubbard? If it functions fine, then you start having, then Panther fans will be like, oh, whoa, did we cut Chuba Hubbard? Did we trade him? Yada, yada. I would just say this: Panther fans can come up with the most galaxy brain stuff on the planet, and it drives me insane. But this is what happens when you've been losing.
To be fair.
Yeah. And that's what it's been like for the last 7 years, is that you'll see some of the weirdest takes from Panther fans. Like I would even say Panther fans are one of the more interesting fan bases amongst NFL fan bases in this league. So let's just say they're desperate for wins.
If you're deep enough in the weeds, every fan base is the most delusional fan base.
Yeah.
Now,
Panthers Twitter is something else. It really is.
I think we've hit a weird spot with running back value too, where I feel like it's almost harder to find guys who see the field well and see the blocking schemes well. And when you have a guy who does, you want to hold on to him, because there are teams who are trying to take the committee approach, but they can't find guys who can see the field well. It's like, sure, they're fast or powerful, but they're not maximizing our run blocking.
I feel like a good to decent running back can take a contender to like an actual contender. But what we've been seeing for the past like 5 to 6 years is our teams that are like holding on or paying running backs, when without that running back, they're absolutely not competing. And the running back makes them compete, but it doesn't put them in that next level. Like you take Saquon off the Eagles, and they're still competing for a Super Bowl. I'm not saying whether or not they win, I don't know. But you take Derrick Henry off the Ravens. Do they have this season? They have maybe. I mean, Lamar's 2-time, should have been 3-time maybe. But yeah, we're seeing teams on the front end.
Saquon off the Giants, they're no longer a potential playoff team ever.
Exactly. So it's a really weird spot, because if you're a 10 to 12 win football team, does an elite running back put you over the edge? I don't think so. You have to be a 13 to 14 win team, kind of like the Giants were built, for a running back to make it worth it. But then who pays running backs? Because the money's got to go somewhere. Somebody's got to pay them.
Yeah.
I feel like the only type of running backs you truly need to pay are guys that can affect the game in all facets.
Just to kind of move this along, because I am eager to get to the offensive line. Offensive line is
Yeah, let's get
kind
to
of
the offensive
my
line.
heart and soul.
I love offensive line talk, and this is the type of line you want to talk about.
Yeah.
So I like this line.
I love the run blocking unit they have set up here. I really think they have some difference makers between, like, Robert Hunt has been one of my favorite run blockers in the league for a few years now. Damian Lewis can be a difference maker. And in the last few years, it's like every time I watch Ickem Ekwonu's tape, it's like, okay, there's suspect stuff with the pass pro. I get that. I think it did improve last year, but the run blocking was like, he is a difference making run blocker in my eyes, and that there is real value there. But Jared, how are you feeling about this offensive line across the board, the depth and the starting lineup?
So basically, Carolina brings back most of their offensive line from last year. Like, I would say the starting five from last year, from week 1 of last year, is back for likely week 1 this year. But there's a competition at center with Cade Mays and Austin Corbett. Cade Mays came in and had some good tape out there. So now you got 2 quality centers competing for the starting job. And I think that's a good thing for Carolina because you got the depth now. Corbett doesn't win the starting job. He's the type of player that's like, oh my God. He's not the type of player that will be like, oh my God, I got to request a trade. I can't do this here. Like he will play guard. He'll play center. He'll play either guard spot. He'll play center if he's asked to, as a backup too. And Brady Christensen can play all 5 spots along the offensive line. Josh Nijum is a solid depth piece at right tackle.
Really strong swing.
Savala is and Savala is very solid as a depth piece, as a serviceable player on the depth chart overall. Haven't done much on Ja'Trey Carter, but
I can tell you about Ja'Tyre Carter. He was a Bears draft pick.
Tell me a little bit.
He's got some nice feet. Decent, like a good athlete. He played basketball out of high school, had some D1 basketball offers. But he's a major project, or at least 2 years ago when the Bears let him walk, it was like there's a lot of growth to happen there. You're betting on athletic upside more than anything. Really quick, powerful hands, but it's just he's still learning a lot of how to play the game when he left the Bears, and it was kind of he needed to figure it out by then for him to stick around.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be good for Carter going to an offensive line like Carolina where he doesn't have to play immediately. And also, he's with a great offensive line coach in Joe Gilbert, who turned this offensive line into a great unit last year. Ekwonu, I think, is deserving of a contract extension. He's going to get paid soon, whether it's this offseason or next offseason. Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt were 2 of the best signings of all free agency last year. And then you got Taylor Moton, who's entering the final year of his contract. That's the interesting piece of the offensive line in terms of long-term aspects. What will Carolina do with Taylor Moton? Because they're going to likely end up eating most of the money he's got right now. I think his cap number is like $31+ million. It's a big number. And there were rumors whether he was going to get restructured, whether he was going to get traded, whether the Panthers should have drafted his successor. I think them not drafting offensive tackle shows they want to get something done with Moton, but also they trust the depth that they have at right tackle with Nijum. So I think they show their comfortability levels with their depth and their overall group on the offensive line. I wish they would have added more talent overall in the trenches just to add more competition. But it's hard not to be excited with this offensive line. It's a good group. It's the anchor of this roster. And I've talked to so many people about the Panthers' improvements on the defensive line. And I'm talking a lot of teams, you need to build from within, from inside out. Always have to do it. You don't start at quarterback. You don't start at wide receiver. You don't start at corner. You don't start at safety. You start in the trenches where it gets ugly. Offensive line, defensive line. The Panthers went out and got themselves a better defensive line. On top of that, they get Derrick Brown back. On top of that, they have a good offensive line from last year.
I missed it earlier in the podcast, but Derrick Brown's, when he's on the field, he's an absolute game changer.
He is. And that's what makes me confident in Carolina's ability to improve by 3 or 4 wins next year. Because both sides of the ball in the trenches have improved. And when that happens, you're going to see success on both sides of the ball. I truly believe that.
I'm always a believer that the trenches set your floor and the skill positions set your ceiling, right? Skill positions and quarterback set your ceiling. The trenches set your floor. Right. And you can have really strong skill positions, but if your floor is still low and quarterback, but if your floor is still that low, it's still that low. That's how you become the Bengals last year, right? That's how you just can't win football games without the trenches.
Yeah, have all the best receivers in the world and don't matter.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
do you got anything else, Q?
No, I mean that covers it for me. I just like to get Jared's final thoughts,
final thoughts
for the year.
All right.
And, if he's a betting man, what bets?
Yeah, we're looking at a 6.5 win total here. We're looking at making the playoffs at plus 235. We're looking at winning the division at plus 390, and we're looking at 100 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. So if you're a betting man and you're looking at these odds, what do you liking? What are you not liking?
Full disclosure, I don't bet.
Perfect.
But I will say this, a little tidbit. 2003, the Carolina Panthers started the season against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 1.
Jake Delhomme.
Jake Delhomme's debut. They won Week 1. They get to the Super Bowl in 2003.
They lose.
2015.
I've never seen a Super Bowl.
Anyways, I'm sorry, man.
It's okay. I'll just sit here.
2015, they play the Jaguars in Jacksonville, Week 1. They beat Jacksonville. They go on to play in the Super Bowl in 2015.
Cam Newton.
Yep.
MVP.
10 years later.
We'll lose.
Week 1. They play at Jacksonville.
Bryce Young MVP. Are you saying Bryce Young MVP? Because we don't have those odds up.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Can you bring up the odds for Bryce Young MVP?
Let's see.
I'm just saying, if you want to get bold, if you want to get spicy, if you want to be like, I believe.
I'm so down for the year of Bryce Young.
10 plus 10,000.
I believe in this.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I believe in this.
150 to 1 on DraftKings for Bryce Young.
Okay. MVP. We're taking Bryce Young MVP right now as we speak. let me pull it up.
$1 gets you $150. I mean,
listen, man, if the Panthers got to the Super Bowl this year,
$100 get you?
If the Panthers got to the Super Bowl this year, I might be unbearable for the next couple of years.
Oh, we're not taking Panthers to go to the Super Bowl. We're just taking Bryce Young MVP.
But
it's his time.
All jokes aside, I think the Panthers are in a good position to greatly improve their win total. I think they'll be competing for the division. They'll be competing for the NFC South by the end of the year.
I think
Bryce Young becomes. Yeah, I think Bryce Young becomes a top 10 quarterback in this league this year with the weapons he has. Defense improves. Yeah, I think he's that type of caliber player.
I see him 12 to 15, but top 10's good.
I think he can progress into a top 5 quarterback.
Top 5.
I'll be that bold. I think he's got that potential.
The thing
but if he has a career similar to Matthew Stafford, where he's just among some of the better quarterbacks.
He doesn't have Stafford arm talent, though.
No, but if he has the sort of play over the next decade of where he's basically Matt Stafford
Yeah.
who's one of the better quarterbacks in the league, I'd take that all day.
He
Absolutely.
doesn't think Matthew Stafford's very good.
I don't. I love Matt
You?
Stafford.
Oh, it's
love
Jared
Matt.
Goff you hate. He hates Jared Goff.
I'm fine with Goff. I just don't think he's anything that. He's fine.
I agree with you.
But
Hey,
one thing that
we're being
One-
nice here.
something
We're
that
getting
really,
spicy.
really impressed me with Bryce Young's tape this year was like, and coming out of college, I was concerned about his vision. You know, the way that he saw
Okay.
stuff as it comes open and attacks it. He seemed hesitant a lot to me, and that led to a lot of, you know, him having to scramble, him having to escape, and I just wasn't sure how that'd work in the NFL. His first year, I think he did struggle with some of that. And I think coaching aspects led to some struggles too, and some of that stuff. And by the end of last year, I felt like I was seeing the same style of play that I saw at Alabama, but with a quicker processor. And if that continues to go that way, I think he can become a pretty good passer. It's just the question
agree.
of how quickly that continues to show itself.
And I think what helps with Bryce is that it's similar to what Tua has done, where we've seen some of the camera views of like the helmet cameras where we're seeing him process the field, but we can't see. For us normal people, we can't process that quickly.
Yeah.
Bryce Young has insane processing ability. And I think his football IQ, his knowledge of the play and the structure of the play, what different coverages they could be going up against, all these different factors, I think allow him to have the processing, the anticipation, and the IQ to be a terrific quarterback in this league. And what I mean by terrific, I'm not saying Pat Mahomes level. I'm more saying one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league.
If
Exceeding
Bryce-
that Tua Purdy level, like getting
Yeah.
beyond that.
I think he's going to be better than Tua and Purdy.
Ooh, that's MVP conversation.
He'll be in the MVP conversation a couple
Hey,
times.
do you know who wins $2,000 if he wins the MVP?
Ooh,
This guy.
Dude, check your phone. This guy
did
Yep.
you really make a Bryce Young
Yep.
MVP bet?
just now.
$25 to win 2,000.
Oh, wow!
Just now, you convinced me, brother.
Man,
I'm on board.
I respect that. You're going to have a lot of new Panther fans following you.
All right.
Hey,
Well,
like our YouTube, we got what is it, X these days? It's not even Twitter nowadays. We're so old. We outgrew Twitter, but yeah, come hang out. We're a lot of fun during the season.
yeah.
We do a lot of crazy stuff.
But just two crazy wild guys.
Yeah, we'll be together in the state of Pennsylvania for week 1. We're gonna have college football. We're gonna have NFL. Who knows what we might get into then?
But Jared, can you tell everyone where they can find your work one more time before we let you go?
Yeah, man. So, guys, you can find me over at X/Twitter. You can find me on Blue Sky and Threads. All those sites at JRod NFL Draft. You can also find most of my Panthers work at Panthers Wire with USA Today, SMG. Then you can find my other content with Chiefs, Rams, and Jaguars over at On SI for those websites. So make sure you guys go check that out. I got some film reviews coming out over the next several days, next couple weeks for all those sites. So make sure you guys keep an eye out for it.
I got high hopes for these Panthers.
Fingers
Bryce
crossed,
Young-
man.
Bryce Young got the arm talent. I'm excited to see it. Thank you so much for coming, though. Well, we can never thank anybody enough for coming on and talking ball with us. We love these previews. So again, thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And keep up with us throughout the season. We like to do a little banter on the X. So come hang out.
For sure.
Yeah.
I got you.
All right. Well, thank you, Jared, and have a great evening.
Of course.
And when you knock us down, on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off. And then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.